I will call the December 11th licensing hearing of the Public Safety Committee order at, what is it, 4:30? 4, whatever. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Alder LaFave.
Here.
Alder Perella.
Here.
Alder Peterson. Here. Alder Heidemann is excused and Alder Rust is present. We will do an introduction. We'll do an introduction because we have some guests here today. So I'm Alder Rust, chair of this committee and District 8.
Chuck Adams, City Attorney.
Jeremy Udovich, 615 Clara Avenue.
Trisha Nielsen, 314 Niagara.
Brenda Richter, Kessing, 327 Erie Avenue.
Robert LaFave, Vice Chair of the committee and representing the 4th District as an alderman.
I'm Dan Byczowski. I'm here to observe.
I'm Wendy Gussie. I live at 314 Center Avenue, number 2.
I am Krista Mogalski. I'm the police chief.
Kathy Hoffman, City Attorney's Office.
My name is Audrey Kraft. I'm the Assistant City Attorney. I was just moving around, sorry.
Sorry. Brian Richter, Kessing, 327 Erie.
Bob Nixon, 515 Huron.
I'm Kurt Zempel, the Assistant Police Chief.
Grazia Perrella, District 7.
I'm Dan Peterson, District 3.
I'm John Dolson, Far 9.
Thank you. Alrighty, I'm looking for the approval of minutes from the November 13th meeting.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor of approving those minutes, state aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that's approved. Alrighty, item number 6, Charter Ordinance 1-24-25, a charter ordinance being subject to the home rule provision of State Statute 66.0101, the Wisconsin statutes, to authorize primary elections whenever 3 or more candidates file nomination papers for an elected city. Chuck or Audrey?
Yeah, I'll talk about this one. So we've traditionally held a primary election for decades and decades whenever 3 or more candidates file nomination papers for elective office. But there is a state statute now that does require the council to either make a timely determination every election on whether there's going to be a primary or to pass a charter ordinance like the one proposed. A timely annual determination is not always possible given the short time between the deadline for returning nomination papers and the deadline for setting a primary election. So it seems best to do it as a charter ordinance. And so this is what the ordinance does. It clarifies that there will always be a primary election when there are enough candidates filing papers in city elections. The statute does require this to be a charter ordinance, so it does require a 2/3 majority, and there is a process where if enough people, if enough members of the community object and file a petition, it would not necessarily go into effect, but would go to election.
All right. Any questions, comments?
In the majority of the common council. So this would require, as a charter ordinance, would require a majority of the common.
Supermajority of the
Supermajority.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And would there be, I'm sorry, would there be a hearing then? I mean, to bring this to the public or?
No, there's not necessarily a hearing. It's just that a charter ordinance comes with somewhat higher requirements in order to pass. You have to have a 2/3 vote, and then it doesn't go into effect immediately upon publication. It goes into effect 30 days after publication, so that if people wish to object to it, they can.
Okay.
And yeah, and that's why we're doing it now, so that we can get it through before any primary election.
So in other words, this is past practice, basically, but it hasn't been written down in the guise of a charter ordinance.
Right. We've not had a charter ordinance, nor have we been. I look back about 30 years and could not find that we've been actually doing it each year either. So
as we discussed earlier, I'm literally surprised that it wasn't on paper.
Yeah.
And I believe that we should.
Yeah. Agreed.
It would make it a heck of a lot easier. And you'd know if you get nomination papers from 3 or more, there's a primary.
All right, any other comments from the committee? All right, otherwise, Mr. Dolson?
I'm the county clerk for Sheboygan and just wanted a clarification. In the print form, it said 60 days enactment after, and you just mentioned 30.
The charter ordinance does, it's 30 days, so.
30?
Yep.
Okay, my concern is, if it was 60 days is what was printed in the original draft, that it takes it past the deadline for getting information.
Yeah.
So,
It's 30.
It says 30 here.
It says 30.
okay, thank you for clarifying.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, I'm looking for a motion.
I make a motion to do the charter ordinance to, if there are over 3
To approve.
candidates.
Yeah, you're making a motion to approve.
Yes, to
Okay.
approve that.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that's approved. All right, item number 7, discussion regarding establishing a short-term rental ordinance. This is a discussion only item. We will not be making any motions today. All right, so I believe Audrey, because
Yeah,
you've been working on this.
yep, I've been working on this for a while. Obviously, I think there are a lot of people here for short-term rental concerns today. It's very important thing. This would be a very robust ordinance. I think we want to make sure that we get everything in there the first go around that needs to be in there. So a few months ago, I had spoken at a discussion only at this committee, the Lhps committee with these alders about the short-term rental ordinance. Some sort of concerns that they had. They had asked me to do some research into that, so I have done that. I have made some updates. That's why I've given all the alders a new copy of the draft ordinance as it sits right now. There are a few more things I'd like to do with this ordinance before it goes any further. I have some people I need to talk to. As you can imagine, things have been a little weird the last month and a half. So we're working on getting back to where we need to get to. So that being said, originally, Alder Pirelli, you had asked me to do some research into the minimum day rental. So I looked into other towns of about Sheboygan's size, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to throw some names and numbers at you. And if you need me to write this down and send it to you, that's totally fine as well. So the town of Holland, which I believe is south of us, has a minimum 7 days rental until the property owner gets a short-term rental license. Sheboygan Falls has a minimum 7 days rental, no matter what. Eau Claire has no ordinance. That being said, I did look them up yesterday. They had a proposed ordinance change that went to vote yesterday for a minimum of 7 days rental. And I have not had the chance today to look at how that vote went. So other communities are talking about this too. Lake Geneva has a minimum 7 days rental. Wauwatosa has no limit. Fond du Lac has no short-term rental ordinance. West Allis has no short-term rental ordinance. Racine has no limit. Appleton has no ordinance. Kenosha has a minimum 7 days rental. Ashwaubenon has a minimum 7-day rental for non-owner occupied short-term rentals. So if an owner is like renting out another half of their house, there would be no minimum. But if it is not owner occupied, there is a minimum of 7 days. Green Bay has no limit. Brookfield has no ordinance. Lake Delton, which is right near Wisconsin Dells, has a 7-day minimum for single and family duplex homes, single family / duplex homes. Wisconsin Dells has a 7-day minimum. So really what we're looking at here is that either a community has that 7-day minimum or they have no minimum at all. There really is no in between that I can see.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So what's going to happen is, just to go through, is the committee will be allowed to speak, and then I'll open it up to general. And raise your hand, and I'll call on you individually.
So those are the days limits that I have. Is there any questions any alders have on that?
Sure.
Yep.
So how did we come up with the 3 consecutive days?
That was just sort of a number I threw out there when I had originally, within the city, city employees had met. We had sort of talked about potentially having a limit, as some city employees had said, well, maybe we don't want to have like party houses that get rented one night. So that was sort of just thrown out. I did remove the limit from this updated one. after doing some research. So that can be added if holders think that that's necessary.
Okay.
Any other questions right now?
One follow-up.
Yep.
As far as the 10 nights each year without a short-term rental permit and license, is that something that aligns with other, always under the
Could you tell me where you're looking?
0.5, still 0.5?
Okay.
5A? So it's still something that you have seen?
I think that's something that I've seen in other places. It really just makes certain that the people that are using this as sort of a business are being regulated and not the people that are just sort of renting it out to like friends and family, maybe like 5 nights a year or something like that.
That's something that you have seen?
I believe I've seen it in other places.
Okay, thank you.
But I think that 10 days is underlined because it's, other people do different minimums, so it's something that the committee could decide on as well.
Thank you so much.
Any other for this part here?
I mean, I can just talk a little bit. First of all, I want to thank Chairman Rust for kind of putting this on the agenda. This was kind of put on my request because living in District 3, I think there's a large percentage of short-term rentals within our district. I think actually District 4, I don't know so much, but I think year 2 as well have quite a few. And I'm getting calls on both sides of this issue, and I just kind of felt like this was something that I wanted to bring to the committee and kind of come up with a final decision that we could eventually hopefully vote on in future meetings. And whether or not we even do this is kind of up in the air. I'm still kind of up in the air personally on it. I see the pluses and minuses. I know that at the county level, the short-term rentals are required to get a permit for tourist rooming house. And one of the things that I did, one of the constituents had kind of clued me in on the database that's online. And actually, if you look at that, and I've actually talked to the county as well, there's about 180 short-term rentals within the county itself. And I took the database today, and there's like 10,000 short-term rentals across the state. And that also includes like things like hotels and stuff like that. So any kind of boarding permit to include hotels all the way down to short-term rentals or the tourist homes. And there's only 37 registered in Sheboygan. And so the vast majority of these short-term rentals right now aren't even rented or aren't even getting a permit at the county level or the state level. And so I just think it's a good discussion for us to have. I think there's some advantages to the tourist rooming homes. I owned a lodge at one point where I had for a long time rented it out to people short term, and I went through the whole process of getting the permits. As much as a pain as it was, I could see the benefit in it, and I think that there is some benefit in trying to have some regulations on these houses for the purposes of safety and accountability and that sort of thing. But I understand from an owner standpoint that it's, just one more regulation that you have to kind of jump through that can be kind of a hassle. So I want to thank everybody here for coming, and that's pretty much all I have to say at this point.
All right.
Okay. On item number 9A here, you have penalties. Once we get all of this settled out and we've got it all on paper and we've got the rules and the regulations and everything like that, we have to think about those maybe bad actors that would, maybe screw, with the system. Maybe we should start considering what kind of dollar amount for fines, because you would want bad actors to feel a little pain if they go against the rules that we settle down on. So it's just one of the things I wanted to bring to the attention.
Thank you, Alder. Looking back to Audrey.
Right now, at number 9 for penalties, I don't have any dollar amount in there. That's
Right.
really up to you what you think is necessary.
Could we see what maybe other communities?
Yep, I can look it up.
Yeah,
Could you look that up? Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you. And maybe we can make it more in line with what other communities are doing. All right, and then Audrey, did you have
Yeah, so
more
some,
you'd like to get through?
so some of the changes that I made from the last time we've talked about this was again the minimum, I took the minimum out since I don't know how alders are feeling about that. I did include, and I have not finished, both building safety requirements and inspection requirements. So I was made aware by the chief inspector for the fire department, Nick Noster, about some issues that some uninspected properties have had where some people have died because there's not been any smoke detectors. So I bring it up to your attention because it may be something that we want to consider about how and when we inspect, who inspects, how frequently we inspect, and the types of safety requirements that we have.
Again, could you look at other communities?
Yes.
And check out what they
So
use?
when I've been doing this sort of research on other communities, I've really been looking at the day limits. I looked up Wauwatosa, and Wauwatosa just strictly adopts the minimum guidelines for anything that the state requires. So they have 3 sections in theirs, and it says we adopt the guidelines for municipalities being able to regulate short-term rentals, or we adopt some safety regulations that are in the administrative code. So some of these places, some of these municipalities have really short ones, and some have very robust. And I think at least I'm leaning a little bit towards more robust. Obviously, that's up to the alders to decide. But yes, I can do some more research on safety requirements. Those I can look at other communities, but there are requirements.
Right, no, yeah, definitely work with our internal, with what our departments.
So I did change some inspection requirement stuff. There are concerns that we have to think about with respect to the Fourth Amendment or unreasonable searches and seizures. So we can't be going into people's property at unreasonable rates. So I've just put a number out there that I think is reasonable, that properties would need to be inspected every 3 years. Now, that's not a huge burden as it would be if it were every year to get re-inspected.
I'm so sorry, where are you looking at?
I'm looking at 8B.
Thank you.
Yep. So I've said short-term rental does not need to be re-inspected after an initial inspection unless any of the following apply. 3 years have passed since the initial inspection. A citation related to building or fire inspection or occupancy is issued. So if there was a complaint called in by maybe a guest saying that there were no smoke detectors, fire goes in to look at that at that time they can re-inspect. If the property is sold to a new owner at that time, then and the new owner would like to do the short-term rental, then you can re-inspect at that time. Or again, if a guest makes a complaint, we want to take guests making complaints seriously, as are the ones obviously living in these places for a short time. I've also included a section about potentially either building inspection or fire safety inspection having probable cause to enter if they believe that there is imminent safety concerns, and sort of the rules on that. I've copied this from Sheboygan Falls short-term rental, so this isn't something we have to stick to. This is just sort of an example of what other communities are doing. I don't think I've changed much since there. I'm really just at this point focusing on talking to building inspection and fire department on getting those safety requirements.
Thank you, Audrey. A lot of work. It's going to be more work, I'm sure. Any more comments on those items? Going once, going twice. All right, we will open this up to general public. So raise your hand and I'll call on you and we can talk about it and get hopefully some of your questions answered and hear what you all have to say. Sir.
So just to comment on that last topic regarding inspection. So when you do have a tourist rooming house license, the Department of Health and Human Services comes through and does an audit physically of smoke detectors. They're looking for carbon monoxide, safety with bunk beds, occupancy, and then any other general checklists that they have. So I'm just thinking, I'm not sure that it might be redundant to try to require the city to do that.
Do you know how often that is?
It's annually.
While we look at that.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
with the county on that one. Alrighty.
See what kind of things they're doing. It may be redundant. There may be more things that we want to do on top of that.
Yep. Alright. Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Wendy. Again, I live at 314 Center. It's the condo building, kind of by the Blast Ice Cream. I bought that condo 3 years ago, and I'm kind of here just to be heard because I really went through a lot of problems for the first 2 years I lived there. I live under a short-term rental that's above me, and I didn't realize it was a short-term rental when I bought it. As of right now, the problems have been resolved because he rented it to a very nice longer-term tenant that used to live across the hall. But when I first moved there, we have a shared basement. We had consistent drug dealing, marijuana smoke coming through the vents. And this was nightly. We had a rental that somebody moved in there. And it was for about 6 to 8 months they were there. They worked at NEMAC, came home at 3:30. That was their off time, and brought people and parties Monday through Friday, every single night. Neighbors knocking on the walls. What happened was the owner of that unit was nowhere to be found. And I put up with it for way too long. Okay, we're now on our third manager of that building, which is why this has really been resolved as well. The first manager quit shortly when I moved in there. And I didn't really need to contact anyone until the second manager started. They moved a washer and dryer downstairs. The water was spraying all over, and I couldn't find the owner of the unit. The manager, Debbie, her name was at the time, didn't have his contact information. So water was spraying for about a week and a half down in the basement until the old manager, before I even moved in, stepped up and gave me his contact information. So aside from that, there was constant drugs. I was complaining. There was a gentleman sleeping in his car right outside my window, people visiting the car all night long, even during the day. There looked like there was a blood stain next to that car for a little while. These people looked very scary. I'm getting all upset just talking about it. Our management at the time, they told me to go up there and tell them to kindly step outside to smoke their pot because it was not only bothering me, but other tenants in our immediate vicinity. That didn't go over well. It was actually quite scary, and I'll never do it again because they had like 5 or 6 people up there. Didn't look like the kind of people I want to talk to. Aside from that, we've had tenants come that can't figure out the code, so they're knocking on my door. I work from home, and they're bothering me during my work day. So for this gentleman to have 7 units on Center Avenue there have been issues in other units. I don't know if they were all his or not. I mean, I felt like I was just running the fall off from his business. I did talk to him. I've sent numerous complaints to the meetings in the Ellis. It has been resolved, but something needs to be done where, like, who to contact if there's a problem.
So I can say in this, what we're looking at is that there would have to be somebody who would be in charge of that within 35 miles of the property itself.
Okay, because I think he lives local, but he doesn't, you don't see him that often, and that's the thing. It has gotten better.
Right.
I have to say that since this all happened. And it wasn't just that block of tenants. There was another set of them right after that was bad. Then we have the weekend ones that
This is another reason why I brought up that idea of penalties and punishments. We have to make bad actors like that go, it ain't worth it me being here because it's going to cost me too much money.
Yeah. And I had stuff stolen from the basement, of course, that wasn't locked up. I could go on and on. But the big thing for me is the drugs and just the there's no, what do you call it? They're just not responsible. Let me say that. It's like I had like a second job. This one, I hadn't slept in weeks. I was tired. And there was just and I didn't call the police because I was scared. I was terrified. I didn't really want to just move in there. I didn't know anyone. I didn't want to call the police and have these and there was a gang problem down the couple units down from El Salvador, they were saying, my neighbors were saying. And the more I complained to the neighbors around me, the more they came with stories of their experiences, and everyone was they were too afraid to call. Same thing. No one reported it until I moved there. Well, then everything started coming out.
Sure.
So again, we've got great management now. It seems like it's gotten better. The owner, like I said, we've got a nice tenant up there now, but I just think something in Sheboygan needs to be done because it's growing.
Right.
You know, we've got some really nice places there to rent. I'm not against the rentals, but my God, if you have 7 units and you have a unit and you're making money, the people around that unit should not have to go through what I went through.
Right.
It was horrible, and I couldn't afford to move. I mean, I tried. I was just kind of stuck there, and it went on for 2 years, solid 2 years. You know, who's coming next? Who's coming this time? You know, but there were some nice people as well. But man, the bad outnumbered, and and they were there the longest. So thank you for listening.
No, thank you. Great. Ma'am?
I'm Brenda Richter-Kessing. Just a really quick background on me. I am a resident of a historic Ellis. I live on Erie Avenue, just a block or just 2 houses from the water. I am an Airbnb owner. I own a property on Superior Avenue, a block from the water. I'm also a realtor, and I have sold about 25% of the homes near the water in the last 4 years. So I've seen all sides of this. I want my community to not be overrun by rentals. I also see an opportunity. There's many of us in this room that have renovated some very debilitated properties and improved the city, and we are not bad actors. We have, we are all licensed. I was licensed. I've been through all the inspections. I'm very familiar with your complex. I have sold in that complex. I think what this committee has to look at is you have to separate out what are the issues in a complex like that where the HOA rules allow unlimited rentals. Most complexes will cap that at like 25%, and that starts to cut down on issues like that. So be careful not to put an ordinance in place that also the HOA should be handling in how they, you know, allow it to happen. I know exactly what you're talking about though, and I am sorry for your experience. It's something I consider when I show those properties. You've been through a lot with the management there. I think what I have some questions probably more than anything, and one of my questions is what kind of the 180 that you mentioned, or Dan mentioned, and there may be more or less rentals in the city, what percentage of those have you heard complaints about, and what kind of complaints are you hearing?
I have not.
Do you have data on that?
Just to clarify,
Okay.
I said 180 tourist rooming homes within the county.
Within the county, okay.
And of those, there's only
37 are registered.
37 registered within the city.
I got you.
I don't know, I mean, I don't think any of us can collectively say how much complaints there are, what the percentage is, because we honestly don't know how many short-term rentals there are.
Because they're not registered.
They're not registered.
Yeah.
And all I can say is from anecdotal evidence, I get calls a lot about this. This is not an uncommon call where people are talking to me about short-term rentals.
Yep.
I get calls from people that are against any kind of regulation. I understand that as well, but there's just no way to know for sure. I guess my question would be, you know, the good actors. Okay.
Yeah.
You're a good actor.
Yeah.
I know that. I know you.
Yep.
What would it be about any kind of ordinance that you as a good actor would be against?
Well, I think a couple things, okay? And the reason I asked that question has more to do with, I don't believe in any policy, and even in a corporate environment, I came from the corporate world, I don't believe you create rules for the whole group when you need to address a bad actor, okay? So that's number one. So the reason I asked the question of what do we have to do to put in place for bad actors? Well, maybe one of the things is exactly what you're talking about. Everybody has to register. So from registration, we know who has to be addressed. All right. If you have 3 violations, it's done. You know, it's as long as it's a legitimate validate or a legitimate complaint and it's not just somebody who hates every renter, for not a good reason. But someone like you, if that person was registered, once they had a certain number of complaints, they have to hold to fixing the problem or they lose their registration. But a good actor like myself, who has no complaints, that's done all the inspections, that has a 5-star rating, that is actually contributing revenue to the city by the people I bring here who go out to dinner, who frequent the marina and all the things we want to do to improve the city. I don't want to be penalized for being a good actor because a bad actor isn't being held accountable, I guess is where my head's at.
That's my question. How would you be penalized?
I would be penalized. Here's how I'd be penalized.
We are all good actors in many
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
We all have rules that we have to abide by. And yet, the bad actors, we deal with that with penalties.
Yeah.
And so
here's how I'd be
as a
penalized.
good actor, you're not penalized. At least I don't see how you would be penalized by an ordinance.
Here's how I'm penalized. If you put a 7-day minimum on, I'm penalized.
I'll give you that.
Okay. I'll abide by the rules. I don't have a problem. I think it's a good practice to have the licensing, the inspections. It raises the bar for all of us, but it's the minimums. The 7-day minimum is a deal breaker.
Yep.
Okay.
And we aren't, just to be clear, we aren't looking at 7 days.
Okay, well, she mentioned it.
That's what other.
She mentioned it.
Yeah.
She mentioned
We
it.
said,
That's not
as
even-
of right now, the only thing we would be looking at is a 3-day.
Yeah.
That would
At
be
the most.
At the most.
If
And I think it can, and even the 3-day is probably fine on a weekend. During the week, I still bring in 1-day business guys. And in the winter, sometimes we even need a shorter time frame to get a good player in there. But if the minimums aren't being imposed, it's not a big deal because I am a good actor, and I think it addresses someone like her who is dealing with a bad actor.
With the consent of the chair, could I add something to that that might help?
Yeah.
When you said 7 days, by the way, I'm Bob Nixon, 515 Huron. I'm sorry. When you said 7 days, some of the ordinances that I've read, and Holland is a good one because I think it has gone through what lawyers call the 4-factor preemptive analysis. So it's been tested, it's been to court, it was appealed, it's solid and it's robust. But I think one thing, I'm not against short-term rentals either.
Yeah.
Len and I just got back from vacation. That's all.
We,
Yeah, that's all we stayed at.
yeah.
So, and I think they help the local community, and I think allowing shorter rentals is good for the community and good for the good actors. The provisions that are in there that I like, Wisconsin says if you rent it out for more than 10 days in a 365-day period, you have to register. Okay, so then the first step is to register with the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. These guys just rebuild a house beautifully. They were in the registry immediately. So after you satisfy, or not, let me think how to say this. If you don't have registry in the DATCP, or you're not registered locally in a local ordinance, you're not allowed less than 7 days. There's an honor system right now for people to register, and it's frustrating. But I think fewer days would be good. 2 days, 3 days. I think 2 days is fine. You get them in for a weekend. But I do think that I would disagree with you, Brenda. I think you can put in a blanket policy for how people behave. We have one across the street from us that's been at times a problem. And what first got me thinking about this, we had 4 guys. They were there for a golfing weekend. They got drunk, and at my age, I should know better than to go over and quiet down 4 drunks. The next time it happened, it was with 6 women. I thought, I called the police. 2 minutes later, it was quiet. They know how to handle those things.
Yeah.
So, and we've had them where we had a woman, she forgot her key and changed in her car.
Right.
And my 7-year-old granddaughter asked why there was a naked woman outside our window. You know, those are the types of things I want to control.
Yeah.
But I think.
I don't think we do disagree on that, Bob.
No, I think, I don't imagine we would. But I think if you, all of the communities that I think have reasonable provisions yet robust, have three things. You have to register with the state, Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection. You have to have a local license, and you have to have a seller's license with the Department of Revenue. Those three things, that's it. Okay, but register. So if you aren't registered in those, then you can get to your fees, your penalties.
Right.
So it kind of cascades down. And I think the trick here is, I think economically, it's a good thing for the community. I think to maintain the integrity of the neighborhoods, I think that's important as well. So what we got to do is find the balance, but it's got to have a little bit of teeth.
Yeah.
And I would also suggest there has to be, not within the ordinance itself, but I think there has to be some form of mechanism to report houses that are using short-term rentals, but they haven't registered. I've got 6 that I've identified, and they're busy. Couple of them perfect. Couple of them not so perfect. You know, so we've got to find that balance. But I would agree with you. I think the 7 days is a deal killer.
It is.
But I do think we have to have some form of regulation. And I think it's a competitive fairness thing as well.
What do we do on the long-term rentals? What's the regulations on long-term rentals?
You could, anything over 6 days up to 29, you don't, you know.
No, but I mean, are long-term rentals registering? Are they, or how are we handling bad actors on long-term rentals? I mean.
All right.
That I don't know.
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
We're talking short-term rentals. We're not talking long-term rentals. No, I understand. But we have a lot of people that want to talk. We can't let, I'm sorry, 2 people kind of control this. Mr. Dolson.
Thanks. I'm in Florida, New York. You mentioned good for the community and neighborhood. I think it's double-edged sword. I have 6 within 500 feet. It's good economically for the city, for community and neighborhood. It deteriorates both of those. So my question would be, I might not even be legal, regulating the number of units.
Right.
Because the people that have these, the ones that I'm speaking of, they're, one is 20 feet from my house, another's 80 feet from my house. So, and you can find them, just go to the RBO, Airbnb, and they'll pop up. You can see there's hundreds. And they're not from here. They're from out of state, out of the community. And so they're not becoming neighbors, part of your neighborhood, they're not becoming part of the community. And it inadvertently inflates the price of these homes because they're coming from Chicago or wherever, and they're picking these up because they are on sale almost compared to what they're paying in those communities. And so they might pick up several of them, and it takes them off the market. For a good example, my daughter in town here bought a house when she was single, now married with kids. She's looking to step up into a larger home, stay in the area along the lakefront, but the price just went through the roof. And the number, partly because the number of units available just aren't there, because they get snatched up. Even another method of how they're being snatched up, the tax foreclosure properties that the county deals with, if they're in a desirable neighborhood for a VRBO, but a fixer-upper, the people that are bidding on them often aren't from the area. And they're paying top dollar for a fixer-upper that, you know, just 6 years ago might have been $80,000, and now they're paying, you know, 2-3 times that. So that would be my concern, is regulating the amount of them. And maybe put that 10 pounds,
Right.
you know, back into the 5-pound can.
Right.
Because they're already out there.
Right.
So that's my concern, is the number.
Thank you. Sir? Did you-
Yeah, there's a lot of good points being made. I think with his concern regulating how much, once you kind of bring down the bad apples per se, I think that's gonna kind of do it on its own. And doing that obviously is what you guys are working on, putting rules and regulations in place. What I wanted to add is my name is Dan Pachowski. I manage short-term rentals all over the city, a lot in South Pier, so I'm really familiar with the vacation rentals. I also manage properties in Green Bay, in Wisconsin Dells, in Adams County, and their processes for getting your license and your making sure you're compliant with the local regulations are pretty self-explanatory. They have a list of everything you do. There's a person put in charge that you deal with directly as a host or a manager. And I would suggest possibly looking into those two, Brown County and Green Bay, Adams County and the Wisconsin Dells. If you look at their procedure of getting onboarded to be in a short-term rental, and essentially putting that into regulation. So if you want to operate a short-term rental inside Sheboygan, you have to follow this process. They have a board, and there's a lot of things that go on with it. But I think there's a lot of things you guys are looking into, you know, the state licensing, the seller permits, so on and so forth. Adams County has it laid out magnificently. It also includes your health inspection and everything like that. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to ask is, you guys obviously have notes on your own. Is that something eventually you would allow the public to see?
So right now, this is a working document, so this is protected by attorney-client just because we're elected city officials. So once this does come to a vote, then it would be made public. And we usually get the agenda out the Friday before a meeting, roughly about, yeah. So, yep.
This would be a question for you, Brenda. You know, this gentleman's point about the taxes. People come in, the prices are inflated, all boats rise in the harbor, everybody's taxes go up. My taxes have risen dramatically, and if you're doing a short-term rental, depending on the market elasticity, you know, it's a non-issue. You just pump it into your rack rate. It's fairly easy to think for what I call the 24/365 people. It's difficult. Or, you know, I'm retired on a fixed income, or, you know, I'm living in the house year round. You have hosted and unhosted facilities, you know, that you're managing probably. I don't know. But I think it's a good point when the community's down 5,200 units and prices are being driven up by people that don't live in the community. It gets rough. It really does. And there's a revenue opportunity there for the city, for all of those people that aren't registering. Not huge, but it assures that we're getting paid something to have people follow the rules.
Right, and I think that's something that we as a city can definitely work on with this, is we can create part of city planning office, somebody that deals with this, or if there's people like you who you know that they're not registered, but they're definitely writing it out, they can check up on that and make sure that they do get registered, because if they aren't, then we hit them with, you know, a fine and things like that.
I don't think any good actor would be opposed to registering.
Right, no,
I really
no,
think
but no.
it's a good idea for all the reasons that have been mentioned.
What would be the process from the city if I was to take those 6 addresses that I have? And how would you resolve that issue?
We could give them to building inspection right now. That's all we could do.
Well, and that's a county level thing too. You could also talk to the county, the health and
County
human services.
or your county supervisor.
They would, because they're kind of responsible for establishing the tourist rooming houses. So if you talk to them, If they're not registered, talk to them and say, hey, these guys aren't registered. And where I kept my place, it was in Manitowoc County, and they actively would go on to VRBO and all of the sites that had short-term rentals, and they would make sure that each one of those houses that was listed on VRBO was registered. They would call you, they would make appointments to come to your place to actually start the inspection process. That's not happening here in Sheboygan County, but I think that that's something that could be addressed at the county level, at least to get it started at that level, for sure.
I have a short-term rental. I also happen to work for the county for public health. And I'm in the office with those inspectors, and there are only 4 of them and a supervisor, and they are so overwhelmed. I can't imagine how in the world they would be able to enforce something like that or follow up on the number of tourist and rooming houses there are that are not licensed. And they're very aware of it. But they are on the go all day long, every day.
Well, and like we were saying, maybe that's something we can look as a city, maybe creating a position if able to do something like that. Well, maybe not.
So just a bunch of thoughts, on that, having to create a position if we're able. If you do go down the licensing path, there should be a fee associated with a licensing path that at the quantity of rentals that we're talking about in the city, if we can capture even half of them, we'll bring in likely enough revenue to cover that. I live in the town of Wilson. They adopted a short-term rental ordinance, I guess about 2 years ago now, modeled off of the town of Holland, and it's worked out, I think, spectacularly well. It's provided a recourse. It's answered the question to the concerned constituents, because our board there now has, something to point back at and say, we are aware, we do have a course of action if there's an issue. But I'm telling you, one of the problems you're going to run into immediately is you're going to get calls with issues and concerns. And it's a really fine line of understanding, like, is this just somebody that doesn't want that next to me? Or is it actually something that is breaking a law, an ordinance, a nuisance, or creating a nuisance? In my experience, 100% of the time in the town of Wilson, it's just that the neighbor just doesn't actually want that occurring next to them. Nobody's actually creating a nuisance, breaking the law. So that's really tough, and I empathize. I think as an operator myself, we are all fighting for the same thing. We all want excellent guests that are quiet, super respectful of the community, helpful where they need to be, and they take good care of our properties as well. But we cannot choose our neighbors. And you referenced a longer term tenant, 6 to 8 months. That doesn't fall under the short term rental category. Also agree, in a condo complex, this is really something that should be taken up by a condo association and not really policed. It could be policed by the city, but it should also be first line of would be like the condo association. And then again, we're going to hear things of things occurring and happening. Can they actually be tied back to a short-term rental? And in my experience over the last few years, I'll just tell you, it's not going to be that case. The actual real issues caused at a short-term rental are minuscule. I'm telling you. I would be shocked to hear anything different. But I will also say, I don't blame anybody for not wanting to have, people next to you that you don't want next to you, like I do in the town of Wilson. I've got guys that they drive 4-wheelers in their yard. But they live there. They own the house. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't have to like it, but I really don't actually have recourse. And we got to just be careful, I think, when we look at, taking action against a bad actor. And how do we define it if it's actually a bad actor, or if it's just somebody that's a little bit annoyed with what happens to be seen or heard out their window at the moment.
Thank you. Alrighty,
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
What we were running into, there were also, aside from that 8-month rental, there were also weekend rentals. I would just go and stay at my mom's for the weekend just to get away. They weren't all bad. But what we were running into at the homeowners association is we have one meeting a year. And the neighbors that I were speaking to that wanted this kind of some regulation or something through the homeowners, they didn't want to put it up as a vote because the owners that are renting these out have the majority in this building. So that's why nothing's getting done there. It's like no one's bringing it up because we're the minority that are dealing with it. So that's why I'm here to like maybe instead of the homeowners, this might be a better avenue.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Something. It's a different situation there.
Anybody?
Just a closing comment. I think short-term rentals weren't really an issue 10 years ago. With the 2017 law that was passed within the Budget Act, you can't deny the right of a person to start a short-term rental, tourist rooming house. But if you have people that aren't honoring the system, you have a law in place that clearly, the state clearly didn't say you couldn't enforce it. I think it's incumbent upon the community to put a reasonable act in place or not act, ordinance in place that regulates these, creates fair competition, creates an economic opportunity. I'm not quite sure how to deal with the tax issue myself. I mean, it kind of blows me away what's happened with that and what they're selling homes for that, 3 years ago wouldn't even come up to happen. But I applaud your effort to get something in place, and I hope you do see it. I think it's needed, or otherwise we're going to be like, the proverbial frog in the water, and the temperature is going to go up, and we're going to wonder what happened to our neighborhoods. So thank you.
Yep, thank you. Alrighty, I thank everybody for coming and speaking. This is definitely not the last time we will have a discussion on this, so I welcome you all to come back.
I just want to quickly make sure alders have any other questions for me or any direction that they want me to take. I've written some notes on things you want me to do, so I can do
While we
that.
do that, and then while we look at minimum rental period, I don't know, one night, I think.
One night?
Yeah.
Other alders?
Also, is there any way for us to get the knowledge of if we have incidences of bad behavior? Is there a vehicle or a way for us to gather that information so that we can put sanctions?
I've written down, look into reporting mechanism.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8. I might have to leave soon, just so you guys know. Alright. Discussion regarding mobile sellers permits for mobile boutiques. Discussion only. Dan.
So I'll
Dan
take
brought
this
this,
again.
yeah.
So this is on me. I have a constituent that has a shop on Michigan Avenue, and she sells small items in her shop. It's like a boutique shop and that sort of thing. And she wants to have the ability to take her business into a truck occasionally, kind of similar to that which the food truck is using right now. And so I personally don't see a problem with kind of doing something like this that would mirror what the food truck owners are doing. And, I would be willing to work with Audrey to kind of come up with some sort of an ordinance that at least we could present and, and kind of go from there. And I guess I'm just kind of curious what everybody else's thoughts are on that.
So basically you're saying it would be the same kind of a venue for a food. It's what they're selling is different.
Correct.
It's not food.
Correct.
I don't see any problem with mirroring the ordinances that we have for the food trucks, but just change what it is that they're selling.
Chair? Would a business like that already fall under the purview of an existing?
So I have
No, it's got to stay open.
Oh, it's got to stay open, okay. I didn't want you to, I didn't want to disturb you.
Conversation.
Thank you, Chief. I have an imperfect solution for your constituent currently. So we have something called a mobile entertainment permit that we can do. So this would cover, from what I understand, she wants to do these tarot readings and she wants to also sell little trinkets and such. In the interim, while we're figuring out this potential ordinance, what she can do is apply for a mobile entertainer's permit. So this permit is in our ordinances. It's in chapter 14, section 9 or title 9, and then underneath that it's 370 through 374. So what this does is allows people that do mobile entertainment to be able to do that mobile entertainment. This would include things like but not limited to axe throwing, virtual reality gaming, karaoke, games of chance and skill. So I would read that to include, and I would include that to include tarot card readings. So what she could do is she could have a trailer or attached to a vehicle or a vehicle with a back portion where she could do her tarot readings inside that. That does not cover selling like the trinkets out of that, but that's just a more like immediate solution to what she would like to do.
So why don't we do that, and then you can work with Audrey for your specific.
So just a follow-up,
Yep.
excuse me. So
yeah, we've got
going back to that question. So there is no other ordinance that would
I gotta
cover
go
this
quick
type
here,
of.
but Bob can close the meeting.
I think there's transient merchant, which may be a bit different, but transient merchant is not the exact same as what I understand she would like to do. Transient merchant is much less in the city, much less often. From what I understand, she wants to be able to set up and be constant around
I'm not
somewhere.
sure how constant it would be.
Maybe
I think
like once a week or
something
something like
like
that.
that,
Even
yeah.
still, that's more than a transient would be considered.
I'm just trying to see if we can avoid having a new ordinance just based on the request of one person.
But this could
all the
cover-
respect to the person.
Yep,
itself.
I totally understand. Yep.
I mean, it doesn't make much sense resources wise and everything. So that's why I'm thinking if there is any other ordinance that would cover for it. I mean, that I don't know, if that's a possibility.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Chuck.
I mean, oh, go ahead.
So there's not, because what we're talking about the city right of way, right? And so in essence, what she's asking to do is to use public property for a private purpose. And the only way we can allow that is by licensing it, permitting it, that kind of thing. We've done that with the food trucks. We've done that with the mobile entertainment devices. There are a few other options for one-time type situations where people can do that. But for beyond one time, in essence, there's going to have to be, because you as the common council control the public property, and the public property has to be used primarily for a public purpose, not for a private purpose. You would have to determine that there is a public interest in allowing this and then create a structure by which that can happen. So, maybe there is, and you'd have to think about such issues about, where are you going to allow it? Food trucks, when that was created, they thought about such things as competition with stick-built restaurants. They thought about things like competition with the farmer's market. They thought about, some of those issues. It's a similar type thing. If you're going to basically authorize people to sell, basically make money privately on the public right of ways, you need to think about what's in the public interest, and you need to consider the impact on the neighborhoods, on the businesses that are owning or renting actual properties. Not that you can't do it, but that's why you have to do it that way.
Okay. I guess, I mean, from my standpoint, if there's enough interest in even looking into this, I guess I'm happy to do that, but.
Yeah, there
If
has
there's
to
not-
be enough interest, I would say.
Hold on, or if it may be excused.
Huh?
May
Yes,
I be
you
excused?
can be excited.
So if there's enough interest, I need like at least 3 owners to have interest in this in order for me to start working on this.
So now, I would recommend that you guys get together and then look at that and then bring it back to this committee for
But even to do that, I mean, I think I need to have some other people that would be interested in like sponsoring that ordinance.
May I, Chair?
Yeah.
So, have we ever historically received more requests of this type? Would that make sense to have an ordinance to cover this category?
This is the first time hearing of it. I have worked here for
In
6
your
months.
case,
so-
yes, right. I don't know if this has.
What you've seen is a couple of things. With the mobile entertainment ordinance was passed, you folks passed that only about a year ago. It was a situation where there was a singular entity that wanted to do this, but got enough alders to back it up. And then when you passed it, the entity no longer wanted to do. So you have this ordinance now that has never been used because it was passed just for a singular situation. We did purposely write it though, so that it could be broader. So somebody else comes along with something similar. The only other circumstance I'm aware of like this is typically where you have a storefront who is asking to use the street in front of their property on a one-time basis. And those you've done on a one-off basis. You just recently did it for the kitchen store on North A Street, where on a one-time basis, they asked to be able to use the street and you licensed them to do that. But I'm not aware, in the past 28 years beyond this of a lot of requests to just simply do business as a store on the public streets.
I guess then my question would be, if we have the mobile entertainment permit, can we somehow amend that maybe to somehow incorporate this one additional thing? And I don't know if we even limit, I can't imagine that this is going to be heavily utilized in the city, but you could even limit the number of permits that we give out. And if there was some way to just amend that, maybe, I don't know if that's feasible and makes more sense. And again, if this is something that people aren't interested in, and you think that this is not going to get through common council, then let's just stop right now. And I'm totally fine with that.
I would consider, is that a possibility? I think that is a reasonable idea to consider to amend the current ordinance to allow also the sales of products. Is that a possibility? And if that makes sense.
I'm not sure that it would make sense in the specific context of this mobile entertainment thing.
Okay.
It might. Do you have any thoughts, Chuck?
Yeah, I mean, mobile entertainment was designed specifically for that type of thing, where somebody wants to, go to food truck night and do something other than just sell food, but have like an entertainment, have karaoke machine, have, axe throwing. That's where it came from. This really is about sales. And so the ordinance was not drafted around sales. It was drafted to avoid problems that you might have from mobile entertainment issues, things like noise and, length of period, length of time, location, things like that. I think you'd probably, if you're going to basically say we're going to open up our streets for people to use the public right away for a private, for private profit, I think you need to think about different factors that play a role. How is this going to affect the businesses nearby? How is it going to affect the residents nearby? Will it prevent people from wanting to go into business, downtown because they can just do it in a truck and drive around, that kind of thing.
Van, could you get back to this entity?
Sure.
And find out if there are other people in the community that would, if this would be a big enough thing so that we could either amend the thing that we have or create.
That's reasonable. Yeah, I'm not.
And then bring it back to the committee.
That's totally fine.
So could we table that for right now?
For sure, absolutely.
Okay, then I say that we'll table that for right now.
Okay.
And we'll view this at a future meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, I guess that takes care of number 8. We go into agenda item number 9 now. That's RO number 91, 24, 25. from 12 to 24 by the city clerk, submitting various license applications.
Yep, there were 2 license applications here. One is for a reserve liquor license. One is for the transfer of a current Class B liquor license. The first one, staff is recommending holding that so that at the staff committee meeting, we can call in a member of the LLC and talk to them about an issue with their application. There may be a language barrier, so we want to have someone there to translate or use a language line to translate and talk to them about what's going on. The second one, just recommend granting that Class B liquor license to the new entities, Stephen Faye's Tiny Tap. This license will be transferred from the Itty Bitty Bar to them.
So
we
just
have-
to understand,
Yeah.
excuse me, Chair. The second one, so this is in the entity already, a business existing, right? An existing business that is moving.
So the business that exists there is just transferring their liquor license to this new business.
Okay, and the new business, do we know, so I want to be more aware of the type of business because after the last experience about the license, I want to know more about the business itself. Is this a bigger place or has 2 tables?
It is,
Does it
it's a
have-
small, this is in my district, it's a small tavern. It used to be called the Sail Rail a long time ago, and
So it is an,
the Itty Bitty Bar, there might be 1 or 2 tables in there, and then seats around the bar, and that's it. It's a very small entity.
the one which is
With
going
the
to
one
be
that's right now called the Itty Bitty Bar is on,
So.
what is
I
the address
think
on
it's
it
on like
again?
16th or something. Let me look it up.
15th Street, right?
Something like that.
Or
Let me just look
Calumet?
real quick.
It's on Calumet, right?
Yes, I think so.
Now, this is
Yes,
a
it is
really,
on.
yeah, this is a very small,
It's a
very small.
legitimate drinking establishment. I
Like
know
these
these people.
Yeah.
I mean,
I understand what you're saying. I understand why, and I don't think that this is the same situation.
No, I don't think so either.
very good. Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, like,
What's that again?
I'm sorry, it's been an established neighborhood bar for years.
For years, yeah.
It's
This
just
one is
different
going,
owners.
this is going to move though. I mean, the.
it's just changing owners.
You're changing owners and
Okay,
they're-
very good. And name.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
Any other discussion on these? Any other discussion on these items?
So I move adoption with staff recommendation.
Second,
We've got a motion and a second to accept the staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair says aye. It passed. And that comes to the end of our agenda. I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
second.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.